The hospital room was filled with the low hum of machines and the sharp scent of antiseptic, that strange mix of hope and despair that only hospitals seem to know. When Caitlin Clark walked through the door and saw 12-year-old Marcus lying in a narrow bed, his small frame swallowed by tubes, wires, and the cold metal edges of medical equipment. She had been to hospitals before, visited sick children as part of her duties as a professional athlete, but something about this moment felt different, heavier, as if she had walked into a story that demanded her full heart rather than a polite smile and a signed basketball. Through the half-open door, she had noticed him sitting upright, staring out the window, his expression too old for a child, his dark hair flattened against his forehead, his clothes rumpled and worn. When she entered, he looked up, not with the delight she was used to, but with a quiet, cautious recognition that made her chest tighten. "You're Caitlin Clark," he said, not with awe, but with a kind of tired curiosity. "What are you doing here?" It wasn't the question she expected. There was no request for a photo, no excited chatter, only that simple, heartbreaking question that hinted at a life in which kindness was rare and visits were temporary. Caitlin smiled gently, pulling the plastic visitor's chair closer to his bed. "I'm here to see you," she said softly. "What's your name?" "Marcus," he replied, then added with a shrug that carried too much resignation for a 12-year-old. "But you don't have to stay. Nobody else does." The words landed like a stone in her chest. There are moments in life that pierce through all layers of privilege and protection, and this was one of them. She sat down anyway, refusing to let his defenses push her away. "Well, Marcus," she said, her voice firm but kind, "I'm not nobody else." As they spoke, the story unfolded in pieces, fragments of truth that painted a picture no child should ever have to live. Marcus had been admitted 3 days earlier with severe pneumonia, the result of months of poor nutrition and sleeping in the back seat of his mother's aging Honda Civic. His mother, Sarah, was a single parent juggling 2 minimum-wage jobs, barely surviving after losing their apartment when she missed work to care for him during an earlier illness. They had been living in their car for 8 months, parking in supermarket lots and rest stops, trying to stay invisible. "Mom's at work right now," Marcus explained, his tone matter-of-fact in the way only children forced to grow up too soon can manage. "She cries sometimes when she thinks I'm asleep, but I pretend I don't hear." Caitlin felt her throat close up. Here was a child who carried his mother's pain like a secret burden, shielding her from despair while quietly suffocating under the weight of his own. It was one thing to read about homelessness, another entirely to see it embodied in a boy whose courage and kindness still burned through the exhaustion in his eyes. As Caitlin listened, she felt something stir inside her. A moral recognition, an understanding that success meant nothing if it didn't translate into compassion. She leaned forward, her voice trembling slightly as she spoke. "Marcus, I want to make you a promise," she said. "But first, I need you to promise me something too. Can you do that?" He nodded, watching her with a seriousness that made him seem years older. "Promise me that you'll never give up hope, no matter how hard things get. Promise you'll remember that your life has meaning, and that there are people who care about what happens to you." Marcus swallowed, his lip trembling. "I promise," he whispered, "but only if you promise me something too. Promise you won't forget about us when you leave. Promise that kids like me matter to people like you." The purity of that request, the raw need for remembrance, cut straight through her. Caitlin took his hand and said the words that would change both of their lives. "I promise, Marcus, I'll never forget you. And I promise something else. You and your mom will never have to sleep in that car again." She didn't wait for anyone else to act. Within hours, she was on her phone calling her team, local charities, and friends in the community. She paid for a hotel room that night, then arranged through her foundation to secure housing for Marcus and his mother. When Sarah arrived at the hospital, exhausted and anxious, she broke down in tears as Caitlin explained that their nightmare was over. But Caitlin didn't stop there. She worked with local leaders to establish a program aimed at helping homeless families with children, ensuring that Marcus's story would not be a singular miracle, but the beginning of systemic change. Months later, when Marcus was healthy and back in school, Caitlin returned to visit him again, not as a celebrity, but as a friend. He showed her a drawing he'd made of a Basketball court with a sunrise behind it. That's hope, he said simply. She smiled, realizing that his words captured everything she'd come to understand. That real victory isn't always about points or trophies, but about the lives we choose to lift when no one else is watching. For Caitlin, that December afternoon in 2024 had transformed from a routine hospital visit into a moment of awakening. It had reminded her that leadership isn't just about inspiring others with your achievements. It's about using those achievements as a bridge to help others cross their own impossible distances. And for Marcus, it meant learning that sometimes, even in a world that forgets too easily, a promise...
Question, to be honest with you, was how many internationals would go in the first round. We figured 2, but as 3...